Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. Today I will be doing a low budget gaming PC build featuring the i3 10th generation. Cheap but powerful. That price starts at $299 USD. The i3 is going to be the base of this build. We will also be using a 500 watt power supply, which ranges between 39 to 49 USD. A GTX 1650, which ranges from 200 to 400 USD, depending on if you can get it used or not, so open box or refurbished. We are using a 2 terabyte hard drive, a 500 gigabyte SSD drive, 2 sticks of 1660 hertz 8 gigabyte DDR4 RAM, and a B460MA Asus motherboard. As well as for the case, we are using the Corsair Spec Delta case, which is an RGB case. Now, if you did want to go a little bit cheaper, you could have went with a $49 to $59 case. And on top of that, we will be using a heatsink and a screwdriver. You can get a good heatsink for $3 US, and a screwdriver you can get between 2 and 20, depending on how high you want to go. So let's get started. Now, for the hardest part of the computer is the one you have to be most careful on, because it's usually the most expensive part, is going to be the processor. For this, there is 2 main ways of mounting the processor. As you can see here, there is on the back here, be as careful as you can, you'll see this little chip there. So now that chip is going to need to match with the chip on the board. If you do it wrong and you compress it too hard, you can screw up both the motherboard as well as the chip itself. So that's just something to note. The one way I always like to do this is have the lettering. There's a little lettering on the top of this. Have the lettering face up on the board. Once you do, you just drop in place and you clip it shut. To clip it shut, you're just going to be applying very light pressure, getting it wrapped around that screw on the bottom there, and pushing this one into that one right there. As you can see here, I'm going to zoom in so you guys can get a better angle. That's the little clip. That's this clip right here. You're gonna clip that in, and then it'll be all secure. For the next step, you're gonna take your thermal paste right here, and what you're gonna do with the thermal paste is you're going to apply a pea-sized amount to the top of the processor. To be safe, I always apply it to the top of the fan. Then once you've done that, you will see on here there are 4 of these prongs sticking up from the base there, and there. What you're going to do is you're going to press down on those, push them into the holes just underneath, and this is going to secure the fan to the CPU and to the motherboard. Once you have that done, what you're going to do is you're going to, on this specific board, every board's different with positioning, but you're going to take the wire from the fan and you're going to plug it in on the right side socket, which has, if you look very closely on the board, you will see what, I don't know if you can see, I'm just waiting for it to focus here. You'll see that it actually says CPU fan. That's this fan right there. Great, so now that we have all that done, let's move on to the case. There we go. Now that we got the case all out of the packaging and I'm done fighting with the box, we'll see what the computer actually looks like, what it's going to look like. So the nice thing about this case is it has 3 RGB fans and 1 black fan. And the black fan is this one right there, and then the RGB are going throughout it. It has a tempered glass cover plate that goes over it, which means that all day long you're just going to be seeing the beautiful RGB lights, which is one thing I like. I also like how modern cases such as this one come with these for the hard drive slots. Rather than taking out screws, your organization is going to be much better because you're just popping in the hard drive right here into these slots, like so, and you're opening it up and you're clamping it in. So it actually just kind of slides in one side and clamps in the other side. So there's no screws necessary, even at the front, to get it out. You're just pinching and pulling, which is really nice. It's a really nice feature. I actually just did this backwards. So the first thing I like to do when building a new computer is I take the hard drive in and put it in first, because doing this is going to help with organization later, so you're not working over hundreds of dollars of equipment. Okay, now that the computer is all disassembled and we have the case out and it's ready to put in the new components, what we're going to do is we're going to take these little trays. And what you do with the trays are you just pop your hard drive into place. It just clicks in. It has these little prongs to hold it in place once you slide it in, and much easier wire control. I like to start with the hard drive because I find it's much easier than scrambling over all the components at the end. And what you're going to do is you're going to insert it into the bottom here, like so. You're just going to insert it directly into the bottom hatch here, where it is just going to sit and then clip. Now that I have that hard drive in place, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take hard drive connector cable, the one that connects the hard drive. This is not the power supply, so you still will need to go, after the rest of the build is done, take one of the wires from the power supply, and you're going to need to wire it back through one of here and connect it like so. I am going to quickly just plug this in and get it all set up so I don't have to later. So I will be right back with you guys once we are ready to install the power supply. So now we're at the power supply stage, one thing you are going to notice is there's a little cubby on the bottom of the device for the power supply. This is the power supply I've chosen. What we're going to need to do is we're going to need to slide this end in, fan going down where the fan is on the bottom of the case, and this side is going to be facing out. And then after we're done that, we're going to need to screw in this side to the case, which is going to hold everything in place. You'll notice one thing I'm doing right off the bat here is I'm plugging in the hard drive on the bottom. The reason for this is because I don't want to have to do it later once I get all the wires tied down and organized. So I'm plugging in the hard drive now to make things a lot easier down the line. Sometimes it's just a little bit finicky on getting some parts to align. There we go. Now that we got that done, we're going to be cleaning up some of this mess. So now these cables right here are for plugging in hard drives. So there's not really a limit on how many hard drives you can have in a computer. I mean, you have SD slot, you have SSD slots, you have all different sorts of hard drives that you can be plugging in. For example, one of the hard drives I have actually plugged right into the board here. But essentially all I'm doing is, right now, I'm just running wires through various holes to make them fit later on and more accessible. I've always found it more accessible to plug the CPU hole in the back here where the cord goes. And these I usually just tie with twist ties at the end and stuff them in the back down here. Now that we're at this point where all the wires have been pushed through the organizational holes in the top there, we're going to begin screwing it in, which to do that, all you have to do is take the screws they gave you from the box. You're going to align the holes on the outer case and you're just going to guide them in. Now that that's all done, we'll get to that cable mess over there at the end with some twist ties, which have been provided to us with the power supply. For now, we're going to move on to mounting the motherboard, where they connect to. But let me tell you, the one thing I've learned is the wires are not as scary as they're led on to believe. So right now, essentially, we just put the motherboard in. We haven't even screwed it in yet. We just have it sitting there in the bottom of the case. I've pushed all of the wires. I'm just going to move this so you guys can see. All of the wires have been pushed to the side of the case. It's just for better view of where the mounts are. So the mounts are about 1/2 inch. They're very small. You'll see them around. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to match your I/O, which is that right there. That's right over there. That's the I/O. You want to match that with the hole on the side of the case. That's how you know it's in the right spot. Usually it should just be as simple as popping the screws in once you've matched that and aligned it. However, in my case, because of the smallness of the motherboard that I bought, I'm actually going to need to play around with it a little bit just to find some motherboard screw mount where they're located in there, because they're not lining up. So I'm going to do that and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I've just changed angles here for you guys so you can see what's going on. Let me just adjust it one more time here. There we are. So essentially what I just did was we just mounted the board onto its correct position, and I'm just going to turn this here for you guys so you can get a better look. So the first thing from this point that I like to do is graphics card. The reason why is because I like to make sure there's no errors later on with the wiring. I'd like to see exactly what's going on. However, right before we do the graphics card, because I've already installed the hard drive, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be installing the SSD drive. So I have one of the SSD drives that actually clip into the motherboard itself. So to do this, you're just gonna go into the slot down here. You're gonna do it from an angle. You're gonna insert it, and then you're just gonna push it down. And that is all you need to do for this. And then there's a screw. Just gonna get a better angle here. Just on the bottom here, once you push it down, there's a screw that just needs to go over top of that. So I'm just gonna grab that screw real quick so we can install it. I'm gonna screw that in, and then I'll be right back with you guys. Now that that's all screwed in, let's get with the graphics card. So for the graphics card, you're gonna notice that right along this edge right here is where the graphics card is actually going to come out of. So in order to do this, what you're going to need to do is you're going to first need to remove this screw right there, and this will allow the graphics card to come out of the other end for you to plug an HDMI cable into and access the I/O ports. So let me just take this off, and then I'll show you what to do next. Now that that port's off, the rest is kind of like Lego. So you're going to take the graphics card here, and you're going to plug it into this slot right there. I don't know if you guys can see that. Let me focus the image there. You're going to plug it into that slot right there, from which the graphics card will be installed. Now, some graphics cards do have a little port up in the top right corner where they require additional power supply through. So let me plug this into that spot for you, and then we'll be right back to discuss what's next. Alright guys, so now that we got the graphics card popped into place, what we're going to do is you're going to put a screw in the top section back where you took off the coverings. Where you took these coverings off, you're going to put a screw up there, and then you're going to move forward with the next step, which is the RAM. Okay guys, so now it's time for the RAM. So what the RAM does for the computer, your RAM is your overall speed of your computer. So you want to make sure these are installed correctly, or you could have startup issues when you try to turn it on. The first thing to do is, down in these brackets down here, you're going to click to open the bracket. These brackets right here, you're going to click to open them. And then once they're open, you take the RAM module, you line it up with where you've just opened the computer. Line it up in each slot there, and you gently but firmly push it in place until it snaps in. You'll actually hear them pop in. That's one stick in. Then you're going to do the same thing with the second one, where you're just going to slide, and then you're going to hear a pop on each side, and that is the RAM. That's all there is to it. So now you have everything installed. Now what? So next is going to be the power. I'll be right back with you guys once I'm ready to start wiring the power. Let's start with the hard drive wiring. So I've zoomed in here so you guys can see these little gray cables. These are for hard drives and DVD adapters. So this is the second half of the one we plugged in the beginning of the video. Here, all you have to do is just click it in, and you're done. Now that that's clicked in, let's move on. This next cable we're going to plug in is pretty much the power for the entire computer. It is 16 pins long. It's the cable that is going to effectively run your entire computer. So what we'll do for this one is we're going to turn it around like this, and we're just going to clip it in slowly but firmly. Make make sure all sides are clicked into the device, and we're moving on. I just want to apologize for the pretty poor angles here. So I'm going to be tilting it up, which I probably shouldn't be doing, but to show you. So next one here is the CPU cable, which is going to plug in to this 6-prong port towards the front of the computer, which is that simple. It just clicks in and then you're good to go. One thing I always know is whenever I get stuck, you can always count the number of pins on the device that you're trying to install. So now we're working on the audio cable. This one will go directly into the amp plugin, and if you count the pins, it has 1 missing, and then 3, and then 5 on the bottom. What you're going to do is you're going to count the amp, matches, and you just plug in. Now some of these cables do take a little bit of pressure, but now I'm just plugging in my RGB fans. So this is another one of these cables. You see the little hinge. See the little hinge on the front there that's going on both sides. You'll pretty much see with these ones, I'm gonna zoom in so you can see it here. There's a little notch, and it also says channel fan 2. So that is where we're gonna plug this into. We're gonna plug this right into channel fan 2. Which I'm having trouble with while holding a camera. Now that it's plugged into channel fan 2, that should be working. And then now all we have to worry about is the power button and power connector, and then we can test it up and fire it up. So next up is the power pins that connect the power button to the motherboard, which effectively makes the computer turn on. So if you read the manual you get with your motherboard, it will tell you exactly where each pin goes. So in my case, I have 4 pins. I just need to find them here. I have 4 pins. So I have a reset switch, a PLED, and a plus PLED, and a power switch. So in my case, I'm going to revert back to the manual here, as everyone's motherboard will be different depending on which motherboard you buy. So right here, you can see that the power TN and the GND are part of the power switch, which is these 2 buttons closest to the no pin. So as explained, these right here are going to be going in front of the missing pin. So I have the power switch, which is going to be going in front of the missing pin, like so. And then I will be back once I plug the other ones in as according to the book. So guys, I think the most important thing to building a PC is A, wire management, and B, making sure the motherboard that you bought, you read the manual specifically about this right here. It gets really frustrating when you buy all these parts and you cannot assemble it because you don't know where anything goes. So the other thing I learned as well is to test for faults. One thing I did, and I'm going to talk about this in a later video, is on that power button, when you're trying to figure out why your computer turned on, is it the CPU, is it the GPU, is it the RAM, is it this? One thing I noticed that you can kind of check off the index right away is if you take a flat tip screwdriver and you touch the 2 ends, the ground end and the plus end of where the power button is, you can actually get it to force start that way with the power supply connected, although it is not recommended. That's an advanced tip. So I'm gonna get this cleaned up and then I'm gonna first test it out here. So let's test it out. I do have it plugged in now with the ground connected. Let's test it out, see if it works. So I have mine on. The next step is to plug it into the computer. Now I am reusing a hard drive from my previous computer build, so you're not gonna get to witness the BIOS setup of the computer. If you guys would like to see a BIOS setup of the computer, please let me know in the comments below, and I might consider making a video of how to actually boot from BIOS or boot from an external hard drive. Okay, so now as you can see, it booted up. The only thing is that one of the fans, I didn't have 4 fan supports, so I had to choose between this one and the back one, and I did find the back one more important. So essentially, we booted up. You have to hit F1. It starts into the BIOS. Now, if you already have a Windows copy installed on your drive like I do, you just select it and then you boot from the drive, and you just hit save and exit F10, and then you will OK it, and then what will happen is it will boot into BIOS. Or not boot into BIOS, it will actually boot directly into your operating system, saved operating system, Windows, whatever you have on there. You just gotta give it a second here, and it'll boot directly into Windows. As you can see, it did save my profile on here and direct into Windows. And just remember guys, if you like my content, remember to give us a thumbs up and subscribe, hit that notification bell. Check out our website at techtitan.com. We are releasing new content every 3 days. I will post a link in the description, as well as a link to every part I use making this video.